All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Corey. I'm president here at the Seeds of Sustainability Club, and we got a workshop on Hypertufa. I suppose everybody knows that. That's why they're here. Hypertufa is a substitute for natural tufa, which is a porous stone, and they used to make troughs out of it for like watering troughs for horses and things like that. And it's hard to get, so people came up with an alternative to have that rock look. Just want to mention that this isn't necessarily sustainable. I'd rather use this than plastic containers, but you can make it a little bit more sustainable by using some different ingredients, and I'll mention that stuff. So basically, Hypertufa is a combination of Portland cement, peat moss, and perlite. And the cement, if you go into the store, you got to buy Portland cement. It can't be some other kind of mix or ready mix or anything like that. It has to say Portland cement on it. And I think it's type 1/2. And anything else with the other aggregates in it, it makes it heavier, and it's already pre-mixed, so you're kind of messing up the mixture. But it's just one part of each by volume. Just take a bucket or a cup or whatever, and just measure it out. Something about the peat moss, when you're mixing it up, you want to try to break it up as much as possible because it kind of forms clumps. And I've been trying to experiment with a better alternative to using peat, and it's coconut coir. You can get it in compressed blocks. You put it in some water, it expands to a huge amount of its normal size. I let it dry out a little bit because the extra moisture can kind of affect the mix, but you could use that instead. It's a very similar consistency. It's actually got less twigs in it, which might be bad, might be good. I haven't actually finished one yet, so I don't know, maybe I'll post on the Facebook page when I get a successful one. Coir, C-O-I-R. And I bought it on Amazon because I couldn't find any place locally that sold it, but there are places locally that sell it.
I found pet stores have them.
Okay.
Right about that. I'm not sure if it's coir, but it's stemmed on coconut husk, and the same thing. You add water, and just really comes up to a large volume.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess pet stores have something. So the next thing, before I get into mixing, once I start that, there's no stopping. So I wanted to show you and talk to you a little bit about the containers, what you can mold stuff in. You can really use anything, and I've got on here 3 basic shapes, and you can really, we've got some other containers here that we might practice on, but there's kind of 2 main ways of making this, where you have an inside and an outside mold. So like this cardboard box, and I've got some sheets of plastic inside so that the water doesn't just get sucked into the cardboard. You could alternatively use 2 plastic containers, one inside the other. And you can actually use, say you wanted to, well, this one would be really difficult to do actually, but
you always have to have 2?
You don't always. That's so if you had, say, a bowl and you just wanted to have the outside surface be nice and natural looking, and then the inside surface would be, you'd rather have that smooth. Maybe you wouldn't rather have it, but you need something to support it to give it that bowl shape. So you can, what I would do is flip the bowl upside down and then build the mixture up around that, and then cover that with plastic. And you would need something sturdy, more than just cardboard, maybe plywood or something like that underneath to support, because you'd be building out at least 1 inch around, depending on the size. Another thing is, depending on the size, so for something like this, where you've got one inside the other, a wall thickness of about 3/4 to 1 inch is going to be strong enough. But in this is going to be my first unveiling of this. You want more about 1.5 to 2 inches thick to really get the strength. So I'm gonna unwrap the whole thing. Just get the plastic stuck in there. So, nice thing about cardboard is that you can just cut the container off, and you could do that with the plastic too. And even though this is concrete, I can pick it up with one hand. It's actually a lot lighter than regular, just concrete with sand. That's another reason why you don't use the mix. It makes it too heavy. So this has been in for about maybe 36 hours, and this is I'm kind of getting ahead of the mixing part, but I wanted to show you this, and now I'll tell you a little bit. If you wanted to roughen this up, at this point you could use even a screwdriver to put some scratches in it, or maybe a heavy-duty wire brush, and give it a more natural outside. But this is. Yeah, I just poked these with my finger, and but alternatively you could drill a hole after it's completely dried. You can see this is kind of a dark gray. It'll be a light gray when it's finally dried, just like regular cement, maybe a little bit darker. And there are cement dyes out there, but I don't know what's in them, so I plan to use this eventually for some herbs, and I don't know what's in the dyes. Actually, that leads me to the next thing. Before you plant in this, since this is a very alkaline substance, it'll actually leach off a very alkaline, the water that comes off of it is very alkaline. So it's going to turn the soil that's in there very alkaline.
Will it leach off all the time, or just for the first?
Eventually it'll finish. It'll be done leaching off. It may leach off a little bit, but it's going to drop off significantly after, once it's dry. Right now I can actually kind of smell this because it's still curing, and you can kind of speed that up a little bit by using vinegar, since it's an acid, and kind of do an acid wash to neutralize some of that. But it'll still leach out slowly. But once it gets down, one of the ways you could do it to kind of weather this is to just leave it outside in the rain and just let a few rainstorms take care of the washing it. And then, so if you made it in the summer, leave it out over the winter, and after it's been fully cured, you do want to let it fully cure first before you put it outside. Another thing about the curing process is you let it sit for a day to 2 days fully wrapped up. You want to limit the amount of moisture that is given off, and after 1 to 2 days you unwrap it, and then
For a second, and go back what you said. You want to limit how much moisture is given off.
yes, because it's actually a chemical change inside here where it needs water to complete that change. So if the water just evaporates, it has nothing that's the curing process, is that there's a chemical change going on that hardens this. So you need moisture to stay in this in order for that curing process to go on.
You have it sealed.
I have it sealed as best as possible. You don't need to hermetically seal it or anything like that, but just wrap it up. If you've got some small pots like this that you're covering up, you can just put a bag like this and tie it up or tuck it under. So it's not super critical. Just do the best you can to slow down the evaporation process. All right, now that I made a mess here, I'm going to make another mess. Oh, let me finish about the curing process. So you let that initial curing process, the 1 to 2 days, sealed up. Then you can let it take it out and do whatever kind of finishing surface finishing you want to do to it. And then
2 days in the cardboard box,
in the plastic.
in the plastic.
Yeah, the cardboard box is the mold, but the plastic is the
So, but
important
after
thing.
2 days, you take the mold off?
You could take the mold right off. You could put it back in, but I would leave at least one. You want some water to evaporate at that point, because 1 to 2 days, the curing should be almost complete, and now you want the water to actually start evaporating out of it. So you want to leave it, basically you want to vent it at that point. So I might leave this wrapped up like this, and then just lay the other piece of plastic over it, but it's still open to the atmosphere, and it can still, the water can still evaporate out of this. And that's probably going to take, I've seen numbers 2 to 3 weeks. I'd give it, the longer the better, really. So, because something like this where it's 2 inches thick, it's going to take longer for it to evaporate out of this. A smaller one might take 2 weeks. So,
Should any consideration be made for some minimal reinforcement?
yes, actually, all right, so I mentioned the thickness of the material, but if I made this much larger, I might want to put some reinforcing bars, some steel bars, and what you could do is, say you made a rectangular container like this, you could lay down about 1 inch, put the rebar inside, and then lay the other inch on top of that, packing it down, and then build your sides up. And if you really wanted to, if you're going to have some tall sides, then you might want to put some rebar in there as well. So if you had a really long section and the sides was tall, you got to think about the soil that's in there, and when it's wet, it's actually putting pressure on this sidewall. So having even another piece of rebar up there that goes all the way just to the end, or you could use chicken wire would be okay, especially if you get a round object where it's easier to shape the chicken wire, or welded wire fence, which is a little bit is thicker than chicken wire, and you could use that for the sidewalls. Also, they have I think it's called the roving fiberglass, and you can get the fiberglass that's in for fixing your car and stuff like that, or your boat, where it's actually woven and it's in a sheet. But you can get the fiberglass where it's just fibers. It looks like the filling that you might use for like a pillow or something like that, or a stuffed animal. And you could mix that up during the mixing phase. You can mix that into it, and that gives it some fibers inside that adds to the reinforcing. And you could use that for any size container. It doesn't have to be just for really large ones. So the larger the container it is, the more you have to worry about the forces that are acting on the sides and stuff, and possibly putting in extra reinforcements inside. All right, so now the fun part. I'm gonna mix them up, and if anybody's brave enough, they can use some of these containers and mix something up. I don't have anything to put these on, so you'll have to use one inside the other or something like that. So because this stuff has an alkaline compound in it, it could be a lung irritant. So you want to wear a mask, dust mask, or try to minimize the dust as much as possible, and it'll ruin your skin. My skin's not all that great to begin with. I don't use lotion or anything like that. So, but it does crack your skin. So I'm going to use these today. Plus, it just coats your hands in gray. The first thing when I start out mixing, I start out with the peat moss, because that gives me a chance to be able to break up any large pieces. Actually, I'll save this for the cement. And the measurements aren't super exact. I mean, you want to get them close, but you don't have to sit there like you might measure off some flour or something like that. So I'm going to do about six of these to give some people stuff to work with. Does anybody actually want to do this? Because I'll mix up less. All right. There's actually, this peat moss was in my shed, so it's a little bit damp, which is kind of good because it's not making any dust. So I just run my hands through it. You could use a screen if you have some 1/4-inch or at least 1/2-inch screen.
Are you taking like those sticks out?
I'm not gonna, because they're actually gonna add a little bit of support. They may eventually decompose and it will eventually weaken, but I'm not too worried about that. So
How long do these pieces last?
they'll last a long time. It depends on.
A year?
No, they'll last a lot longer than that. They'll probably last as long as your house. So this stuff, the peat moss actually breaks down.
It's like concrete, I mean.
Yeah. It's
It's got that stuff in it.
yeah. This stuff will.
House one at her house about 40 years old.
So this stuff will break down, so it'll be a little bit less strong than when you first made it, because this stuff gives it a little bit of aggregate that, you know, it's basically, these are like small fibers that you're putting into it.
So it's meant to be left outside because being a weak concrete mix, if you will, it's going to absorb moisture, water, and then it's going to freeze thaw in the winter time. Will that still hold up?
Yes,
Right?
it'll still hold up in the wintertime. It'll still hold up with the freeze and the thaw. I saw a number, I think it said -20 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's a lot colder than it gets around here.
Do you find that it's better versus like pottery, like planters and everything, like as
It's,
far as like weatherizing? I mean, like just being like weathered down and everything.
I think it's probably about the same, because this will absorb moisture just like a plain terracotta pot will, and that's kind of one of the benefits. It'll kind of help regulate the moisture in a pot, especially if you're leaving it outside. I like the look of this better than the terracotta. I think, you know, having this kind of stone look, I like that. But they should be just as durable as terracotta, if not more durable, especially like a thick one like that. Okay, so the next thing, I don't even get to the cement until the very last, mostly because of the dust. But I try to start with the peat moss and break up as much chunks as you can. Using a screen really would have helped in this situation, but I didn't bring one in. So I had my hands full. So it's 1 to 1 to 1, actually. The fiberglass, no. I mean, that's kind of an additional thing. You would only want to put in a little bit. If it has any recommendations on the package, I would use those. But really, I definitely wouldn't go a full 1 to 1 with that, especially because that's probably would be more expensive than all the other components combined. But if you're really looking for additional durability, and you've got a larger pot size, larger container size, then that would be a good thing to use.
Viewers, what are you putting in there?
Excuse me?
For the viewers, what are you putting in there?
This is I've already put the peat moss in there, and I'm putting in perlite, and I'm mixing it all together before I add the cement to try and it kind of helps to break up the peat moss a little bit more, and I like to have the mixture basically pre-mixed before I put in the cement, and then I'll do one more mixing, but it'll cut down on the dust that I'm generating. So, and I just mix this stuff by hand. You could use a paint stirrer or stick or a shovel or anything like that. I think I put one extra perlite in there. So that's mixed up. When you get it thoroughly mixed, you know, it'll have that kind of, I don't know what you'd call that really, but it'll be evenly distributed through the peat moss. All right. Now for the cement. I'm going to try to do this without using the mask, so I'll be just as in harm's way as you guys. But I'll show you how I try to minimize the amount of dust. Really, use a shallower container for a starter.
You wear a mask?
Yeah, I would definitely use a mask, but unless I stick the microphone inside the mask, might.
You should be fine.
All right.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
And don't just dump the stuff on there. Kind of just let it slide out and just move the container around. I should be right. I'm not making much dust. The stuff won't kill you. It's just I blew my nose after making that one, and you see all the stuff. As long as you get a all right, so I know this part's definitely really exciting. Should have given you all the extra information while I was doing this, and I hope I've kept count properly. The next part, adding the water, is actually probably the most important part in the mixing process. You really want to get the right amount of water, not too much, not too little. It's almost like seed starting, keeping the right amount of moisture in there so you're not just having this soggy mixture, which isn't necessarily good for the curing process. It can weaken the pot if you add too much, and it's not a real fine line, but you got to get it within a certain range. And depending on if you're going to try to build things up by hand, you want to have it a little bit more stiff, and if you want to be able to try to pour it in between two containers, then which you shouldn't really be able to pour this mixture, but if you wanted it a little bit more liquid so it kind of fills out the container better.
Can you do like when you make them to go? I mean, if it's too liquidy, just throw in some more cement? Or
See, that's actually
that not work?
that actually doesn't work.
What if you made it even Steven, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3?
It really depends on, because all this stuff can absorb moisture. It's actually kind of like flour. Depending on the moisture, you're going to add more or less water, but there is a certain range. I've never seen. It's mostly just keep adding water until it's to the right consistency. But the trick that I've found is that when you're adding the water, you can add a bunch in the beginning. If you got a feel for how much water you need, you can add a whole bunch of water, and then the more water you add less and less water. So you just add a little bit, maybe like a quarter of this at a time. You can just pour that in, because as you get closer, it's really easy to overshoot. But it's not like this. Like if you put in a whole one of these, it would be easy to overshoot it. But if you used a fraction of this, then you're probably not going to overshoot it, and you'll get it within that range.
So you kind of experiment a little bit and see how your pots come out, and you get a feel for it. So it is like making pizza dough.
But even then, before you even put it in the mold, you can really kind of see by kind of giving it the soil test, the squeeze test. You can see how close you are. It's because it actually acts much like soil.
But I guess what I meant is if you kind of make a mistake the first time, it's like I've never done it. So if I screwed up and put in too much water,
Yep.
would I put in just a few more equal parts of the other stuff to try to balance it out? Or if I screwed up the whole batch, it's never to be safe again?
I would say try it out anyways. But it would actually have to be really soupy in order for it to not work, yeah. But there is a point where you've added too much water and it's probably not going to be strong enough. So I'm actually just kind of, I keep working through this, and I find clumps mostly of the cement. So I'm trying to break up that, because the water really needs to get around that cement. That's more important really than breaking up the peat moss. If you were outside, you could use that same screen to kind of dump stuff through and break up the cement at the same time. Yes.
Who uses vermiculite? Which courses?
Probably no coarser than the perlite, but even then, like the perlite has a very large range because it'll break down into a dust. So you don't, but you want it. If you can see.
Yeah, no, I know perlite. So about the size of that granule?
Yeah.
Not bigger. So there's like 3 different. I know the very, very fine vermiculite is what's commonly found at the garden centers, and I think that's too fine.
Yeah, real fine is kind of is not going to give you the same texture. I mean, it's, if you think about it, they put sand in concrete, so it'll probably still hold up okay, but it may not give it that same look where that's it's a bit more rough. So it kind of depends on what you want, but the proportions are probably gonna throw it off if you get a real fine vermiculite. So I would go with something a little bit coarser, like this stuff, like perlite. So this is what it looks like after you got it pretty well mixed. I'm not going to keep on going. I see a few small pieces, but hopefully they will break down in the water. But you want to get it to, this is a little bit darker than if you use dry peat moss, because the peat moss has given up a little bit of its water. So this is, yeah, it's just a shade darker. But otherwise, it almost turns the color of the cement. You almost don't see the other stuff in there anymore. All right, so kind of like making some bread or something. You make a well in the middle. All right. Yeah, I'll start with a little bit, and then so I'm just guessing, just based on what I've done before, that this is probably going to be not enough even. So just so I don't stand in front of the sink the whole time. So I just pour right into the well. Get that, thank you. And at this point, people, if you want to come up, there's not really much dust, especially since the peat was wet. I try to get it. Yeah, go ahead. You can throw some more in there. About half of what you got.
Yeah.
That's good for now. And after every time that I add water, some stuff is really wet versus the other stuff which is real dry. So I try to get it mixed together pretty well before I add more water, because you may get to a pocket where it's really wet, and that's it kind of throws off what you're mixing in. All right. Just do the whole thing.
So is it gonna end up being about 4 containers of water, like an equal part, like everything else, or not really?
I've never actually measured it out to see how closely it comes. It could,
You just gotta do it
but
by eye.
yeah, I really do it by eye, and actually really by feels. I just take the mixture. It's starting to clump together right now, but it's very crumbly still. When it gets to the point where it's done, and you'll see how much it sticks together, and you can actually squeeze a little bit of water out of it. You may actually go a little bit on the drier side, depending on if you're doing kind of a free form.
Well, a cement bag will give you the amount of water you use per bag, whatever.
Yeah.
So once you like cure it and the alkaline comes off and stuff, if you like weather it outside for a while, it's safe for animals to drink out of? Like birds, like if you made a bird bath or bees or something? Or maybe not?
It may be. I've never found anything on that. I think people do make bird baths out of concrete. So I can't imagine that this, because the peat moss and the perlite are the only thing different versus regular concrete.
Yeah, I didn't know really what perlite was.
It's a mineral, and it's very
Oh,
porous.
okay.
So yeah, if you weathered this and even did kind of the maybe even take a brush and take the vinegar, take some strong white distilled vinegar, and just kind of brush it on there real good before you. I mean, I don't know what they do commercially for bird baths, so I would definitely weather it and maybe do the vinegar as well, just so you're not killing birds.
Corey, can we back way up? Why is peat moss a preferred material? I understand the perlite, but what's the advantages of peat moss?
It's
The thing that makes it lighter?
it makes it lighter. Perlite makes it lighter versus sand, which is very dense compared to perlite. So
It's just another aggregate besides the perlite?
yes, well
What crop? Okay.
were you talking about the peat moss? Yeah, it's another aggregate. It also it'll absorb water, it'll hold water, it'll break down over time too, especially on the outside, and give it a more weathered look.
Okay, so that's, okay.
It's more
I get that.
probably more about the look of it really than
Okay.
anything else. But it's
That's what gives it its character.
yes,
I guess you could use just perlite, but miculite if you wanted to.
you could. And I mentioned earlier too, I don't know if everybody was here, but coconut coir would be a good alternative too, since peat moss comes from peat bogs, and they're
depleted.
yeah. So eventually, just like oil, they'll run out of peat too.
And then coconut, fiber, you get those at like pet stores and stuff too, right? As well as garden centers?
Yes, according to Mark, he's found it at pet stores, and I actually haven't found it at garden centers. And I just bought it online, but it was about the size of a brick, and it was I think it filled up at least a gallon of the stuff after it was expanded.
Probably
This more water?
You buy amaryllis sometimes and get one of those cubes. that
Just a
are
little
dry
bit.
and packed in there.
Just gonna put some over here too.
They expand like
All right, that's good.
20 times.
All right, this is getting pretty close, so I'm gonna add less water each time I do it. So that right there is not what you want. once you get that mixed through, it won't look like that. But
Use a hoe instead of your hand if you want.
yeah, I like using my hands
Add
though.
some of the dye that you mentioned.
Yes.
Is that in the dry form or is that in the wet form?
The stuff that I was gonna try it for like flowers and stuff that I wasn't gonna eat, and I believe that was a liquid.
So would you end up adding less water?
Yes, you basically exchange that for water, and they have directions on the package too.
The more dye you add, the darker the color?
Yes.
I wonder if the standard cement colors are available through like a Mason supply or an additive they use to color mortar.
Yeah.
In fact, like you notice the mortar on the brick buildings here, like a sort of a pinkish brownish cast to it. So there's a lot of colors available that way.
Yeah, the stuff that I bought would give it more of a terracotta look to it. It's kind of like the color you're talking about. All right, a little bit more water, please. Just in two places, like you did before, and then right there. That's good. Thank you. It's getting a little bit better, sticking a little bit better, but it's still on the dry side. Yeah, a little more water, please. It's good, just right there. Thank you.
Just having fun.
I used to make mud pies when I was a kid. I still like to. I feel it getting heavier with the water, so it's getting pretty close.
Would it make a difference if it were more wet than dry? I mean, if you have it a little too wet, would it eventually dry out? If it's too dry, it would just crumble?
Too dry is definitely gonna crumble. You can go a little bit more wet than I'm gonna make it, and but if you get to a point where it's really soupy,
Right,
then
but I'm just
it
saying,
actually,
yeah, what if
yeah.
poured it on?
But if you get to a point where it's too soupy, it actually decreases the strength of it as well, because the water won't allow it to cure properly. All right.
Chemical reaction with cement.
Go ahead.
An optimal amount of water as a reaction occurs. Like you were saying, too much won't.
All right. Thanks.
And too little won't allow it to react.
What's the difference between Portland cement and regular cement?
Well, Portland cement is kind kind of the basis of all the other stuff. If you go to a store, you can buy stuff, but it may be pre-mixed already. Like I think Quickcrete might be. Quickcrete's a brand, but if you just bought the kind of like ready cement, yeah, concrete mix.
Cement, gotcha.
And cement, I believe, is the actual stuff that they make that is the basis of concrete. Concrete's with the aggregate in it already. You can see a little bit of water coming out there when I squeeze it. Squeeze it pretty hard. This is if you were, yeah, I'd go a little bit more than that. Yeah, basically, I use about half of that right there. Good.
I need to apply what was cement. I live next to a cement wall. I used to go over there.
You'll be getting it like now, or need more water?
This is pretty close. This would be good, especially if you're going to do a more of a free form. I can actually I just did squeeze a little bit of water out of there.
Yeah, you can see it come 3 fingers.
You could go a little bit more than that, but you wouldn't want to squeeze it and it just starts running water. This will hold up. This is the consistency that I made that one because I had cardboard boxed. It's not as sturdy, so I wanted it a little bit denser. But see, that holds up pretty good. All right, we have some rubber gloves over there.
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Anybody want to try?
If you use the inside of the pot, you don't, because it has a bottom. You don't have to worry about it being unsupported. So the small ones might be kind of a pain to use. But I'll make a.
Yeah, I was looking at the boxes mediums, I don't know.
So using this stuff, you really have to work it by hand. Just take a big handful and you just pack it in there. Because it's not like regular cement where you just pour it in there. And I think one of the big things that makes this mixture a little bit different, like if you went by the package and used the water for a regular concrete mix, it would be a little bit different because this stuff absorbs water differently. The peat moss absorbs the water, so it doesn't look as liquid as the other stuff where sand is not porous at all, so it doesn't absorb the water. So you do want to, I would start out, you could use the amount of water that they use as kind of the, don't go over this line, start somewhere below that. All right, so even if you're making something with 2 containers to use that form, it's good to, it's actually kind of a bit much for this size, but one of the easiest ways is really just set up a base in there. Just pack that in there. And then put your form, well, I'm going to throw a little bit more in there, kind of spread it on the sides. For this size, it's going to be hard to get the stuff down in the middle. And then you just fill up around it. So it's actually easier to do bigger ones. It's just you need more material for it.
doing layers with different colors. You know what I mean? Like doing it up, doing a different color and putting a layer of it.
You could. Sounds like a lot of work, though.
Oh, you're such a guy. Oh, that's too much work.
I've seen one.
Imagination is the limitation.
I've seen one where people put sort of beach glass on the outside of it.
Susan was talking about making stepping stones out of, like, get a lid, fill up a lid with stepping stones, and then put in these glass or shells.
You can use a lot of different things to create impressions in the stuff. You could use a big leaf or even small leaves.
Talking about that.
Yeah, to give the outside that kind of an impression.
So question,
Yes.
I don't want you to think I'm weird or anything. But if I did that thing where you had like the pancake type thing, would it work if you just put your footprint in it? Or does your foot have to stay in it?
No, because this stuff is pretty.
3 days later, peel it
This
off.
stuff will hold its shape.
You have to stay there.
2 days.
Do it on
Yeah.
a weekend. So you,
I think isn't that what the mob does? They give you some cement shoes. All right, so it will hold its it'll hold its shape. Yeah.
So just put a stamp
Yeah.
in.
I mean, it may not be a perfect impression, but this stuff is very coarse, anyways. That it's not going to be like if when
It just
celebrities
gives,
go
like,
and.
if you wanted to do
Could you?
your kids.
You
Yeah.
wouldn't use this for stepping stones, though. It's not sturdy enough.
You could, if you did put something in it. Yeah, I mean, the stepping stones you could just do with. I would just do with regular cement. But
for
you could,
decorative
yeah, you
I wouldn't actually. I
What
don't
about
step on my
anything where
stepping
you
stones anyway.
you
Yeah.
see these
Right.
rocks, I don't know how they do it, but
Yeah,
they're like
just for pretty.
stones,
Yeah.
and it's like as if they engraved a word like love, happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. This might be a little bit coarse to do that, though, because this is, I mean, if you look at this, to get this nice and smooth, to be able to do that, it's pretty difficult because the aggregates that are in it are much more coarse, and the peat moss is kind of fibrous, so it
Did you
doesn't
run a
push out of the
session
way.
on how to engrave in stones?
Actually, if you go to your local cemetery, they probably have a guy that does that.
That wasn't exactly the stone I wanted. Like the joy, the peace.
If you did use this for a stepping stone, which
I didn't say anything
I
about
would think,
stepping on it.
yeah. But well, if you did though, I would make it a little bit thicker than you might get in the store, just because this stuff it's not quite as strong as the stuff in the store. At least compression, it's fine. But if you had a large stepping stone, that it might snap in half, because if you put, there might be a rock under the ground somewhere or something, or it's uneven.
Yeah.
You put some weight on it, it just snaps. But compression, just perfect compression, it's fine. So if you make it a little bit thicker, but I think that if you just took some regular cement and just kind of brushed the top, before it's fully dry, then that would probably give you a similar effect. So, all right, so you could use. All right, for something like this,
Put plastic?
yeah, and you could even just put this inside, and then you just pack the stuff into that.
And make a wall?
Yep. And yeah, and you should, when you're using cardboard, you should have some sort of plastic, so that because it'll just pull the moisture right out of the mix. So that's why I had
again, please.
when you're using cardboard, you notice I had the plastic on the inside. The inside wall of the outer box, and then
What was the business of the cooking spray?
the cooking spray is if you want to be able to pull these things back out, because most likely they're going to be stuck to the
So
cement.
did you put the cooking spray on the one that goes on the interior
Both of them.
before sticking in?
You put it on the side that touches the material. If you want to take this off again, I would you could just cut this and break it out, just like I did with the cardboard. So it's
You don't have to spray the plastic bag.
no, yeah. The plastic bag should be able to peel off, especially because it's flexible.
So you put it in, then you put more plastic over it, is that?
Yeah, after you're all done, put the plastic over the whole thing.
I love the way, look at her, she just gets right in there. Get out of my way. I like her. She's a good girl.
You're
after
gonna
my
get
own
your
heart.
yellow thing stained.
If you want to use
Time to
these,
do it.
Are you Italian, darling?
No, I'm not.
Well, you are by osmosis. You've been standing next to me too long. That's what the problem is. Because that's how we are. Get out of the way.
It's pretty smooth.
Yeah, and that's just because of the plastic.
Can I just pick it up?
Yep. Some more room right here. If anybody else wants to get in here?
So I just want to make sure I got this right. If she just did that, she would have to put it in another plastic bag.
Yes, to cover the whole thing.
But if she did that and wants to put something else in there, she'd have to either put plastic on the outside or prepare to break it once it comes out.
Yeah, and if it's
then the whole thing again in
Yeah.
a plastic bag.
yes, the whole thing has to be contained in a plastic bag. And if you're using something, if you're using plastic, then it's obviously doesn't have to go in a plastic bag. But if you're using cardboard, the cardboard needs to be coated with plastic to keep it
But
from
then
pulling the
if I
moisture
was
out.
doing that, would I have to put that in a plastic bag?
This whole thing will go in the plastic bag
But that's only for like 2 days or something?
for 2 days, and then you could take the plastic bag off and leave it like this, and that's enough surface area to let it dry. And you can even pull the inner one out, but I'd leave it in the outer one, and that so it's only just the inside basically that's drying out. Yes.
Mineral oil be suitable for coating an irregular form?
You could use, yeah, pretty much any kind of oil, but you want it. One of the purposes of the cooking spray is that it's a thin film. Yeah, just because I mean, if you had a spritzer bottle for the mineral oil, it would work, but it's a little bit more viscous. So you want something that's nice and light. Even vegetable oil would be okay.
What if you wanted to paint it after or do something color it? Would spray a part, different color or stain it?
I haven't seen anything like that.
It's a thin film, so
Yeah, and even just a quick brush with not even a wire brush, but just a stiff bristled brush, plastic bristle or something along those lines. It's going to take off a little bit of the outside, and that would probably even get rid of the amount of spray that's on there.